Level 1, the first timer. You're 10 years old and your uncle wakes you up before sunrise on a Saturday in January. The truck thermometer reads -15. You don't understand why anyone would choose this. He hands you a 5-gallon bucket to sit on and a hand auger that's taller than you are. You walk out onto a frozen lake for the first time in your life, and the ice makes a sound under your boots that you've never heard before, a low groan that travels somewhere underneath you. You ask if it's safe. Your uncle taps his boot twice and says 4 inches is plenty, and this is closer to 8. You don't fully believe him, but you keep walking. He shows you how to drill. Twist the auger blade into the ice, lean your weight into it, turn until the blade bites and the shavings start curling up out of the hole like pale ribbons. Your first hole takes you 12 minutes and leaves your arm shaking. His takes 40 seconds. He's been doing this for 30 years. You've been doing it for 12 minutes. He drops a small jig tipped with a waxworm down into 6 feet of water and hands you the rod. Nothing happens for 20 minutes. Your fingers go numb inside your gloves. You're bored and cold and you say so. He tells you to watch the rod tip, not the hole. 10 more minutes pass, then the tip dips just barely, a twitch you'd have missed if you'd blinked. You set the hook the way he showed you, a short upward snap, and something on the other end pulls back. A perch the size of your hand comes up through the ice, flopping on the snow, gold and black and alive, in a world that seemed completely frozen a second ago. You've never felt anything like it. Your uncle doesn't cheer. He just nods, like this was expected, like the lake was always going to give something up eventually if you waited long enough. You ask if you can catch another one. He laughs and drills a second hole 10 feet away without being asked. You're hooked, and you don't yet know that word applies to more than the fish. Level 2, the backyard pond kid. You're 13 now, and you've begged your parents for your own gear. You get a cheap combo rod, a plastic bucket that doubles as a seat, and a hand auger you bought secondhand for $20. You fish the small pond behind the neighborhood because your parents won't let you on real lake ice alone yet. The pond freezes early and thick, and you learn the difference between black ice, which is strong and clear and safe, and white ice, which is frozen slush and half as strong for the same thickness. You learn this from a safety flyer your uncle gave you, not from experience, and you're grateful for that. You drill 6 holes across the pond because someone online said that's how you find fish, moving from hole to hole every 15 minutes if nothing bites. Most of your holes produce nothing. You're not discouraged. You're studying. You start noticing patterns. The holes near the drop-off, where the pond goes from 3 feet to 8 feet deep, produce more bites than the shallow flats. You don't know the word structure yet, but you're learning the concept before you learn the vocabulary. You save up for 2 months mowing lawns and buy a flasher unit, a second-hand Vexilar a family friend sold you for half price because the case is cracked. The flasher shows you sonar readings in real time, a green ring for the bottom, marks for fish suspended in the water column. The first time you watch a red mark rise up toward your jig and then dart away at the last second, you understand something no article explained to you. The fish can see you thinking. You have to change your presentation, not just wait for it to happen. You start jigging with more intention, small lifts and pauses instead of just dropping the bait and hoping. Your catch rate doubles within a month. Your dad starts asking if he can come out with you sometime, and you say yes, but you're secretly proud that you know things now that he doesn't. If you're feeling that first tug already, hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next rank.
Level 3, the real lake regular. You're 16 and you finally have access to real water, a mid-sized lake 20 minutes from home that locals fish all winter. Your first trip out, you're nervous walking past the safety signs posted at the access point. A local guy fishing 50 yards away notices you hesitating and waves you over, tells you the ice has been locked at 10 inches for 2 weeks, and you're fine. He's got a flip-over shanty, a portable shelter that pops open like a tent over a sled base, and inside it's 40 degrees warmer than outside because the dark fabric traps the sun's heat. He shows you his electronics, a proper flasher mounted on the sled, and explains jigging cadence for walleye versus perch versus crappie, 3 completely different rhythms for 3 different species that all live in the same water. You learn that ice fishing isn't one skill, it's a dozen small skills stacked together, and most beginners only ever learn one of them. You learn to read a topographic map of the lake bottom before you ever drill a hole, identifying points, humps, and channels where fish stage in winter, the same way a hunter reads a trail before he ever raises a rifle. You buy your first gas auger, a strike master that cuts through 10 inches of ice in under 15 seconds instead of the 4 minutes your hand auger takes. The first time you pull the cord and the blade rips through the ice like it's nothing, you feel like you've been upgraded as a person, not just as a fisherman. You start fishing at first light and last light, the 2 windows locals call the bite windows, when walleye move shallow to feed and everything else on the lake goes quiet. You catch your first walleye over 20 inches on a Tuesday morning before school, and you're 45 minutes late because you couldn't make yourself leave the hole while the bite was still on. Your teacher doesn't believe your excuse until you show her the photo. You start keeping a small notebook in your tackle box, writing down water temperature, wind direction, moon phase, and what jig color worked on each trip, because the local guy told you the fish that bit yesterday are not the same fish that will bite tomorrow. And the only way to know the difference is to track it yourself instead of trusting memory. 6 months of notes later, you can predict with real accuracy which 2-hour window on a given lake will produce the best bite before you've even driven there. Level 4, the tournament rookie. You're 19 and a friend from the lake tells you about a local ice fishing tournament. $200 entry, biggest walleye and biggest perch win cash. You've never fished under pressure before. You show up at 6 a.m. to a parking lot of trucks with sleds hitched to the back, augers, portable shanties, 5-gallon buckets of gear that costs more than your car did. The horn sounds, and 80 competitors scatter across the ice in every direction, each chasing a spot they've scouted for weeks. You drill in a spot you found on a map app, a hump 200 yards offshore that looked promising on the contour lines. Nothing bites for 2 hours. You watch a competitor 100 yards away pull 3 fish in 20 minutes, and you realize scouting matters more than gear ever will. You move, drill again, find nothing again. Your hands are shaking, not from the cold anymore, but from the feeling of the clock running out on you. With 30 minutes left, you make one more move to a steep break line you noticed on the depth finder and drop a jigging spoon tipped with a minnow head. The flasher shows a mark rising fast from the bottom. You set the hook, and a 24-inch walleye comes up through the hole, thick and heavy, the biggest fish you've ever caught through ice in your life. You don't win, you place 9th, but the fish qualifies for the leaderboard, and you get your name called at weigh-in in front of 80 strangers who now know who you are. You realize standing there that this could be more than a hobby.
Level 5, the sponsored angler. You're 23, and 3 years of tournaments have built you a reputation on the regional circuit. You fish 20 events, cash checks in 6 of them, and your name is starting to mean something to the 40 or so serious anglers who take this seriously in your region. A tackle company reaches out. Small, not a household name, but real. They send you free gear in exchange for posting your catches with their jigs tagged in the photo. It's not money yet, but it's the first sign that someone outside your circle thinks you're good enough to represent something bigger than yourself. You start filming your trips, not for money, just because people ask questions in the comments and you like answering them. You upgrade your electronics to a live sonar system that shows fish moving in real time instead of static marks blipping on a dial, and it changes how you fish completely. You can watch a walleye approach your jig, hesitate, and either commit or turn away, and you adjust your jig stroke in the half-second that matters most. You start guiding a few trips a season for extra money, taking out guys who've never ice fished and just want to catch something, anything to justify the cold. Watching a grown man catch his first lake trout through 8 inches of ice and start laughing uncontrollably, unable to stop himself, teaches you something about why you do this that tournaments never taught you. Level 6, the circuit competitor. You're 27 and you're fishing the national trail now. Bigger lakes, bigger fields, 300 competitors at some events, cash purses in the thousands of dollars. You've moved beyond your home lake to fish places with real reputations, a massive border lake famous for giant walleye, a northern lake known for producing state record perch every few seasons. The travel is expensive: gas, hotels, entry fees, and you're not always cashing checks big enough to cover it. Your girlfriend asks when this becomes sustainable. You don't have a perfect answer for her. You do have 3 top 10 finishes this season and a growing sponsor list that now includes an auger company and an electronics brand, enough to offset some of the costs even if it isn't a living yet. You've learned things at this level that recreational anglers never encounter: how barometric pressure swings affect bite windows hours before a front arrives, how your engine noise from the auger can shut fish down in shallow, clear water if you're not careful about drilling technique and timing, how to fish through absolute crowds, 100 holes drilled within a quarter mile of yours, and still find the 2 feet of structure nobody else identified because they were all copying each other instead of reading the math. You finish 3rd at a major event on the border lake, your best finish yet, and the check is large enough that for one season, this actually pays for itself. You also learn what it costs beyond money. You miss your best friend's wedding because it fell on the same weekend as a qualifier you couldn't afford to skip. You miss your father's 60th birthday for the same reason a year later, and he tells you it's fine, but you can hear that it isn't, not completely. You start scheduling your entire year, relationships included, around the ice fishing calendar, the same way you once scheduled it around school. Nobody warned you that chasing a trophy walleye at 27 required the same discipline as chasing a career, but it does, and you're only now starting to understand that the two things were never actually separate.
Level 7, the professional. You're 31 and you've qualified for the sport's biggest domestic stage, a national championship event that only the top 40 anglers in the country qualify for each year. The field here is different. Guys who fish this at the highest level for 15 years. Guys with full sponsorship deals who don't work regular jobs anymore because tournament winnings and appearance fees cover their lives completely. You're the newcomer, and everyone on the ice knows it. Practice days before the event are intense. Every competitor scouting the lake with electronics, marking waypoints, sharing almost nothing with anyone outside their small circle of trust. You find a school of suspended perch on a mid-lake hump using your live sonar, holding at 22 feet over 30 feet of water, a pattern you've never specifically targeted before in your life. You dial in a finesse jig, a tiny spoon tipped with a single waxworm in a subdued cadence, just a slight quiver instead of an aggressive lift that would spook fish this deep and this pressured. Day 1, you finish 11th. Day 2, you refine your presentation based on what you learned overnight and finish 6th. Combined, you place 8th overall with the national championship, your best result on the biggest stage the sport offers domestically. Sponsors take notice immediately. You sign your first real contract, one that actually pays a livable base salary in exchange for appearances, seminars, and content, not just free gear anymore. Level 8, the icon of the sport. You're 38, and you've won 2 national titles and represented your country at the World Ice Fishing Championship, an international event held on a different frozen lake each year, with teams from Russia, Finland, Poland, and North America competing for a trophy most Americans have never heard of, but that means everything inside this specific community. You've fished frozen lakes on 3 continents by now. You've stood on ice in Kazakhstan in conditions so cold your electronic screen cracked mid-competition and you had to fish blind for the last 2 hours, reading the rod tip the way you did as a 10-year-old with your uncle 30 years earlier, and you still finished in the top 15 overall. You run seminars now at outdoor shows, teaching techniques to rooms of 200 people who've been fishing 20 years themselves and still take notes when you talk about jig stroke timing and rod sensitivity. You've designed your own signature jig with a manufacturer, a small profit-sharing deal that finally makes the winters financially stable instead of a gamble you take every season. You mentor a 19-year-old rookie on the tour who reminds you painfully of yourself. Hungry, under-sponsored, drilling in spots nobody else trusts yet. You share waypoints with him that you'd never have shared with a competitor 5 years ago, because you understand now that the sport grows when knowledge moves through it, not when it's hoarded by whoever got there first. Level 9. The Legend. You're 52, you've stepped back from full-time competition, but your name still opens doors everywhere in this world. Manufacturers still call for input on new gear designs before they go to market. A documentary crew followed you for an entire season, and the footage of you catching a state record lake trout through 14 inches of ice at 4:40 in the afternoon with 20 minutes of daylight left has been watched by more people than have ever set foot on hard water in your entire region combined. You still fish nearly every day of the season, not for tournaments anymore, mostly alone, sometimes with your own kids, who've been drilling their own small holes since they were 6, exactly the age you wish you'd started instead of 10. You still remember the sound the ice made under your boots the first time your uncle walked you out onto it, that low groan traveling somewhere underneath you that you didn't understand yet and were half convinced meant something was about to give way. You understand it completely now. It's the sound of a frozen world holding you up, one that most people never trust enough to walk out onto, but that has fed you, financially and otherwise, for over 40 years of your life. You know which lakes freeze early and which ones never fully lock up even in the coldest years. You know the specific silence of a lake at 5 a.m. before anyone else has drilled a single hole, a silence you've been chasing before you had words for what you were chasing. And somewhere right now, a 10-year-old is standing on a frozen pond for the first time in their life, sitting on an overturned bucket, staring at a rod tip that hasn't moved in 20 minutes, cold, bored, completely unconvinced that any of this is worth the numbness in their fingers. Then the tip dips, just barely, a twitch they'd have missed if they'd blinked. They set the hook, something pulls back. They have no idea yet how far that single twitch is about to take them, how many frozen lakes it leads to, how many mornings before sunrise, how many versions of themselves it will require them to become before they're standing on the ice 30 years from now, watching someone else's kid feel it for the first time.